at that time, at that period, people were used to, say, buying things to last for a long time, and he worked on the way to get people to buy the cheaper, shoddy goods, and get used to the idea that something that was older was somehow no use. Something that was new is always better. And he was very, very efficient at doing that too. So he was the father, really, of marketing. He was the guru of marketing. And his techniques were swallowed up by all the marketing companies that blossomed throughout not only the States, but all through Europe as well. And they're still used today to run our minds. There isn't a single project put out by any government that doesn't have to go through marketing companies so that they can sell the idea to the public. Now remember, the idea is never to tell you the truth, but to sell you the idea, because we fall for ideas. We like to hear things that elevate us into some great, wonderful future or whatever. We like the terms they use, and they're deliberately picked and chosen for us. And they truly do have society down to a very fine art, because from Bernays too, they came out with focus groups where they would bring people in to test products. A bunch of the observers would stand behind two-way mirrors and watch and record the reactions of people to different products. They targeted initially the women with fashion. In fact, they brought in the miniskirt. This was long before the 60s, because they tried it in the 20s too. They got women to smoke to make it seem that this was a power symbol. Having a cigarette was a power symbol. And so they hired top people to, at a particular show in New York, I think it was, to suddenly start smoking, and made it very daring to do. And that was picked up immediately by women who saw this, and they started smoking. He did the same thing with getting women to drink different kinds of alcohol. To Bernays, the average person was completely malleable. If you simply observe an individual for long enough, you can find his weak spots or her weak spots, and you can exploit it. And that's the whole process of this is exploitation. All marketing is exploitation. They're trying to sell you something or make you do something, or even change your lifestyle from government wanting you to behave in a different way. This is all done through specific marketing. And then in the 60s, the 1960s, there was a sudden change, they say, and it's in this series that I'm going to put the links up for at the end of the show, where the youth were so sick of the mass marketing culture. And this caused a problem for those at the top, the big salesmen, economists. How do we get this group to buy products? How do we turn them from hippies to people who will actually buy products? And so they studied them. Like any other group, you study them. And eventually they realized that there was a change going on, that people wanted more individuality, to be recognized really as individuals. And at the same time, entrepreneurs came out using the same psychological marketing techniques, Delphi techniques and so on, and started teaching groups on motivational behavior therapy. All psychology and psychiatry combined. And that took off like a rocket, with people who were technically unhappy with their lifestyles, unhappy with life in general, and they wanted to change themselves. So once again, change is good, as they say. And the CIA, of course, were involved heavily in the studies to do with any kind of behavior modification which comes under mind control. In the videos, as I say, the links I'll put up, you'll see that there was the Esalen Institute, one of the first biggies that tried to alter different people's behavior. They tried to alter black people's behavior in the States by forms of encounter groups, and they weren't too successful, so they tried it on a convent in Los Angeles. And within a few weeks, they had literally, and this they'll tell you on the video, by altering their inhibitions and their common sense on anything, the convent stopped. It just closed its doors after about 6 weeks, because the nuns had all abandoned everything, been told that everything they had was a suppressed emotion, let it go, and they all became lesbians. This is the power of this motivational type behavior modification that people generally pay to get done to them. And those who remember that time remember the roll thing and all the other techniques that they used. And in the video, you'll see people writhing about. You'll see them on the floor. You'll see them kicking their heels on the floor, putting their legs up and down as they're sitting on chairs in rapid motions. These are the same techniques you'll see in what they call the Toronto Blessing, where these con men Christians pretend that the Holy Ghost is coming into people, but you'll see the exact same movements and the writhing and the screams and so on that's used in these motivational behavior therapy lessons. So I'm tying the same technique together, even through certain religions and TV evangelists that do this kind of stuff. I could go into the whole techniques of why it works and how it works, but we don't have time on tonight's show. But, as I say, that was the promotion of the self at that time, trying to create the self, and that's when everything started to come out in the 70s and 80s as your personal. Whatever it was selling, it was a personal item. If you were buying something electronic, it was your personal radio, or it was your even personal photocopier. Now it's personal computer. That's where all that came from, because the big marketers with their experts were studying vast segments of society. And that's why they want data on every single person, so they can market right to you and make you buy something you hadn't thought of. And governments, again, are completely interwoven now with these same behavior modification specialists called marketers. Marketers work for governments. They work in campaigns for elections. They work and they study all opposition, by the way, through their polls, and find ways to overcome that. It's quite fascinating how they do it. But what it shows you is that so many people in today's society are malleable. Now let's go back to the initial concept of this. At the end of World War I, now let's remember, World War I was not created by just ordinary people. It was the heads of governments who declared war on each other. The heads of governments were interwoven at that time with empire building. And you had three main people competing for empire, although Britain had the largest. You also had France and Germany prior to World War I, trying to build up empires, which also meant it's a lucrative business for materials and resources for big owners or big corporation owners who became fabulously rich through the wars. But at the end of World War I, here's the mind bender, because as I say, all the psychiatrists and the Freudian psychiatrists came out and blamed the ordinary people for the wars. And that fixation, that it was all the fault of the common man and woman, has stayed with psychiatry ever since. Charles Galton Darwin and others have came out and said that psychiatry and psychiatrists should be on the board of every government to ensure that the politicians were all perfectly sane. Now, what makes the psychiatrists think they're any better? Or reasonable, more reasonable or rational for that matter? And this philosophy held true for a long, long time. But instead, mainly the psychiatrists, what you've got as the next best thing, you have the Bernays types, the marketer types working with government to get them into government, to get parties in, and to manage the people through perception, alteration, or distortion. Not to give truth to the public, but to distort your perceptions on things, on events. The marketers, and in another series done by Adam Curtis too, he shows you these guys working with big politicians, Margaret Thatcher, Bill Clinton, and others. And you'll even hear it said that they had no intention